Digital Foundry is proudly sponsored by the Logitech G935 headset.
Hey everyone, welcome to our third Digital Foundry Direct, the second one from Los Angeles. I'm here, but not actually attending E3, which is kind of weird.
That's right.
John Linneman here, of course, is attending E3. I've been here to get a kind of deep dive presentation on two new AMD technologies. We have Ryzen 3000, which is rather exciting. A lot of buzz surrounding that.
Absolutely, and I think you're here to sort of fill me and everyone else in on what you've been seeing today, because you've been sequestered away learning all about this.
About the Ryzen 3000 and Navi.
That's right. So how about we start with the Ryzen 3000 first?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on there. Obviously, they've moved to 7 nanometers.
Of course.
Which has given them obviously a lot more area to work with. They've moved from 4 cores on a chiplet to 8 cores. They've actually shifted all of the I/O off of the main die. It's got its own die at the bottom there, which is fascinating. And that you've got the ability there to run 2 chiplets of 8 cores each side by side. So we are going to be having an 8-core chip, just like the first generation and the second generation of Ryzen, but there's going to be a 12-core Ryzen, 500 of your bucks, and a 16-core, which they've announced at E3, which we kind of knew about anyway. We knew they were going to be doing it. But that is pretty awesome for a mainstream platform. Other features include support for the new PCI Express 4.0 standard.
Oh yes, of course.
Yep, which I don't think is going to have a huge impact on gaming, but your storage devices, they will benefit. They will be staggeringly fast.
What about a single-threaded performance? Because for my money, that was one of the biggest weaknesses with Ryzen to date. Where it's great for multi-core applications, multi-threaded applications, but when it comes to single-core performance, which is still important for some things, it was lacking.
Yeah, well, this has actually been a big focus for AMD, apparently. So I'm really looking forward to seeing whether the real-life performance matches the claims. But they took the Ryzen 7 2700X, which is the current top-end Ryzen 2nd gen part, and they compared it across the stack on single-core performance, and all of the Ryzens, even the Ryzen 5 6-core chip, the entry-level,
it's the entry-level
one, has got faster single-core performance. Not a huge amount faster, but as you go up the stack, as you'll see on the slide here, you can see that it reaches its zenith with a 21% increase in single-core performance. That's separate from IPC. IPC is instructions per clock, so the clocks will be the same. But this high-end 12-core Ryzen chip has got the highest single-core turbo, so it gives the highest boost over the 2700X, 21% they reckon. Which is pretty impressive.
It's a nice jump.
Well, they're actually saying that it is aimed at gamers this time around, which is a bold claim, because Ryzen has always been kind of
hit or miss, if you will.
Yeah, good enough.
Exactly. It's a good value, but
the value is excellent, no doubt about it.
But Intel, for me at least, I continue to prefer that. I think if you look at benchmarks in general, Intel overall has kind of kept the lead. Yep.
So some of the benchmarks that we've run before, the 9900K, the 8700K, just,
Yeah, absolutely.
It can be up to 30% faster in some of my tests, and that is a huge differential there. So AMD to come out and say, hey, we're actually as fast as the 9900K, in a Roger Moore style, my eyebrow is raised. Because those are bold claims, but they're talking about this 21% extra single core performance. And here's an interesting thing. We know that basically the CCX clusters, the cores, talk to each other, and they all address a big, massive L3 cache, which is quite slow historically, which has slowed down game performance. The way they've addressed this is just to double the L3 cache.
Okay, so it's just they double the size of the cache.
Yeah, and that actually, according to them, produces a big reduction in latency. And but it does mean that the 8-core Ryzen 7 has a 35 megabyte cache, which is insane. Yep. And the 12-core Ryzen has a 70 megabyte cache.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
Which is nuts.
So I'm curious to see how that actually impacts performance then in the real world.
Yeah, that's the thing.
That's what we don't know.
And Intel has laid down the gauntlet to AMD, saying, "Hey, let's get some real-world tests going." There's a big deficit to overcome, but no doubt about it. The 8700K is a monster. The 9900K is even faster.
But still, Ryzen has been a pretty good option already. Good value for the dollar, and if it's improving in these areas, we'll see how it goes real-world performance. But it should at least be a sizable enough leap to be worth looking at.
Oh, undoubtedly. Sure. I think you can't discount Ryzen simply because the value has always been terrific, And,
it's more like I'm thinking of, converting if you have Intel, if you've traditionally been with Intel, like myself, I wouldn't have considered the last generation Ryzen product. Right. But I'm interested to look at this one just to see what they can do.
Yeah, I mean, we've got some slides here that show benchmarks for the most interesting offerings of the bunch. Obviously, they've done the 12-core chip. According to their figures, it's competitive. They've compared their 8-core chip, and it looks competitive. They win some, they lose some, and then they've used the Ryzen 5 up against the 9600K. I really have issues with CPU benchmarks, as you know, and some of the things which I'm finding a bit odd here is that you can see all of the Ryzens having the same performance levels in some games, which says to me either utilizing those extra cores doesn't really do much, or perhaps more likely they're GPU bound.
Exactly.
So, this is, when I go into doing a benchmark, if I see that it's GPU bound, I just don't bother doing it, because fundamentally, who needs a GPU test in a CPU
test? Exactly. Yeah. Also, I'll be curious to see how the driver overhead issue plays out. Pairing an AMD graphics card with that versus NVIDIA. Is NVIDIA plus Ryzen a good?
Yeah,
that still seems kind of like a pretty good option, actually.
You see, here's the thing. I mean, typically Ryzen does benchmark pretty well, but Alex does actually game with a Ryzen. He's got a 2080 Ti with a Ryzen.
We're using Intel, I believe, most of the time.
Yeah.
He's actually on the Ryzen.
Yeah, and he's not a happy bunny a lot of the time.
No.
And, so we'll be drawing upon his input for our testing methodology here.
We've kind of groomed him for this in a way. Like, all right, you use this Ryzen, and then when the next generation comes along, you will know very well if it's an improvement.
Well, he uses Ryzen because it's great with video editing,
production,
not HEVC encoding.
It's a great way to get a lot of cores for an affordable price, which is video software loves cores.
Yeah, and the thing is, if we upgraded him to an Intel 9900K or something, he'd be very happy, but our Ryzen testing would disappear.
Exactly.
So sorry, Alex. Yeah, when you're upgrading to another Ryzen. It's looking like a really good product overall, and if this single core performance issue has been sorted out, if the game, they've literally renamed the L3 cache to Game Cache.
Game Cache. Ooh, I like that.
Brought to you by the Ryzen Overlords.
The Ryzen Overlords.
I've got to show you this picture, the Ryzen Overlords. It's a t-shirt that one of the AMD guys was wearing at the overclocking event that they were hosting. I just want to see Alex in this t-shirt.
That's the real gauntlet that's been turned down by AMD. How can Intel combat this?
Yeah. The Intel Overlords just doesn't...
No, it doesn't quite work.
No, the Core Overlords and that.
So that's kind of Ryzen in a nutshell for now.
Yeah.
Though there's some other tangential things to discuss around it.
Yeah, there's a lot of really interesting enhancements they've made to that, but it's not really for the scope of this conversation because it's pretty hardcore stuff. But suffice to say, I'm really excited to test the product. because if the gap has narrowed with Intel in gaming, then it's it's gravy on top of what is already a really nice processor.
Exactly.
And 12, 16 cores on a motherboard you might already own.
That's
amazing.
That's
the
a
other
win.
thing, just quickly to round off the Ryzen thing, we've always had issues with memory compatibility and
that's
overclocking
right.
and stuff, but they're literally promising us now plug and play with anything, and but much faster memory support as well, low latencies and stuff. So it strikes me as a product that's possibly maturing now, but yeah, that's great.
So Ryzen's been a great product for a while anyways, but I feel like the GPU side of things has been a little bit weaker, if you will, and a little dated. So a lot of people have been very excited to see what Navi will bring to the table. And I think that's kind of the big one here for us to look at. And this applies obviously to the PC side, but also it's very interesting from console perspective in terms of theorizing what the next generation machines will offer. So what did you discover about Navi?
Well, it's looking impressive, is my kind of primary takeaway.
It's no longer GCN.
Well, there's enough retooling to call it a new architecture, I think.
That's right.
And they've really had a strong focus on IPC, which has resulted in some apparently dramatic transformations in performance. So they're talking about a 25% increase in IPC, and combined with extra frequency and the stuff that they're getting from 7 nanometer, what this translates to is, well, the 5700 XT, which is the fully enabled Navi, has 40 compute units.
Right.
Which, doesn't sound that great.
On paper.
On paper.
You look like Vega 64 and everything.
Vega 64 had 64
exactly.
compute units.
But there's more to this.
There is more to it, because according to AMD, this 40 CU part is 14% faster than Vega 64. So essentially 40 compute units at the new clocks with the new performance improvements is outperforming Vega 64.
64 compute units.
Also with 23% less power.
That's great.
Which is, rather impressive. And the question is, I guess, well, this is going to be interesting, because owing to leaks of the 5700 XT, they wouldn't tell us the price. By the time you watch this video, you will know how much that card costs. What we do know is how big the die is and how big the processor is.
That's right.
And it is 251 millimeters squared, which is kind of interesting. Right, so it's small.
Yeah.
If you compare the Vega 64 die
that's
to
like 400 something? Or
495.
495, yeah.
So essentially it's half the size to all intents and purposes, and it's 14% faster. They're talking about a 2.3x increase in performance from the silicon area, which again, you can't argue with that.
Absolutely.
All I would say is that Vega was huge.
It was huge.
Even,
absolutely.
But on its own terms, it was huge. But, the idea that you're getting more gaming performance from a much smaller processor is potentially good news for pricing. The Radeon 480, 580, 590, all based on 14 nanometer silicon, that was about 220 millimeters square.
Yep.
So it's gone up a bit, obviously, but we've got this new process, 10.3 billion transistors on that. And it's pretty impressive stuff, I think. But we've got to talk about the consoles. I mean, there's a huge amount that we can talk about with Navi. For example, 4K 120 support, 8K 60 hertz support, all of this stuff, which is pretty awesome. A new media engine. But returning to the subject of the area, which is 251 millimeters square, console APUs. Typically between 320 to 360 we've seen. I think the original Xbox One was 380.
That's right.
But the bottom line is, if 40 compute units from Navi occupy 251 square millimeters, add on your Zen, 8 Zen 2 cores, there's your APU, there's your
that's it.
There's your console APU, which means that there's been a lot of talk about 80 compute units, 54, 56 compute units. Possibly if it was a die shrink of older compute units, that would work. Like a Xbox One X compute unit, you would get, you'd be able to cram a lot more on there. But it is Navi.
Yeah. But you get the performance gains from.
You get the performance gains.
It's fewer compute units, but they're more efficient. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I mean,
there's a reason nobody's talking about teraflops. I think.
Yes. If you do the math, I mean,
if you do the maths, then the way it works is that, let's say you've got 40 compute units in your console APU,
which they probably wouldn't.
They wouldn't. They'd
No.
disable 4 of them.
Exactly.
36, which, funnily enough, is the same number of CUs as PS4 Pro, which may make backwards compatibility easier.
Yeah, exactly. That's
a theory I've had for a while. Who knows? But the bottom line there is that if you are going to do the maths, you end up with 8.3, 8.4 teraflops there. However, a teraflop with Navi isn't equal performance-wise.
Exactly. It's not a one-to-one comparison.
It's not a one-to-one,
which is why you
can add at least 25%. And to whatever enhancements Vega had over the original Southern Islands, I guess.
Yeah.
So you could be looking at a real life performance differential that is much bigger. So I still think there is much to learn about next gen console performance. Maybe it will tie into this 4x performance boost that Microsoft came up with in their briefing. But again, I think there is a reason why there's no talk of teraflops this time around, because it could well be underselling performance.
That's the key. I think it would undersell performance. What they've sort of conditioned their customers to think of teraflops, it wouldn't apply here in the same way. So it doesn't make sense to list that.
Yeah. So if it was 8.3 teraflops and you add on 25%, you'd get like 10.7, something like that.
Which is kind of ballpark of what?
Which is ballpark Stadia, funnily enough.
Exactly.
So you are looking at performance that's in the same ballpark, if not higher than GTX 1080 in a console. It's not a bad way to start the next generation, I don't think.
I agree. Yeah. That's ample power for a console, and you couple with some of the other additions they're talking about beyond just graphics performance, and of course the hardware ray tracing features which we don't fully understand yet, but because that's actually something with Navi, I guess we know now for sure there is no hardware solution being discussed for ray tracing right now. They want to do that with kind of like compute shaders, basically.
That's exactly what they're saying. This is something that kind of annoyed me a bit. They actually had a slide which said, all right, here's our vision for ray tracing, and the vision was, let's come back to it in a couple of years. Which isn't a vision. It's it's kicking the can down the road.
We're not ready yet.
And they're saying, they were basically playing down the importance of ray tracing in the here and now. The bottom line is that nobody is going to be creating ray traced games or apps if somebody doesn't go out and make the hardware, and that's what NVIDIA have done. They've taken a lot of flack for it, but
it's important. Driving the industry in this direction.
Somebody needed to make the leap there, and
now the console manufacturers are talking about it.
Exactly.
But since they're using Navi, it suggests that.
Well, this is the thing, because there was a bit of ambiguity in the Sony reveal.
Oh yeah, a bit. Yeah, more than that, perhaps.
Because they said ray tracing is really important, and previously it was only in dedicated hardware, but it's going to be in a console. And then Mark Cerny talks about ray traced audio, which is an order of magnitude lower as a workload.
It's a very different thing,
and it's been done in software anyway. That's one side of the next gen console equation. On the other side, we have Microsoft, who've literally just come out and said, oh yeah, we're doing ray tracing and it's hardware accelerated.
Exactly.
So where has that come from?
Exactly.
Because AMD are literally saying, a couple of years down the road it's going to be relevant. The other thing which I thought was really good is they're talking even a couple of years down the road, it's going to be used for the sort of things it's being used for now, so specific lighting effects. In terms of full path traced, complete scenes, They see that as a cloud application, which it's the word that makes your blood run cold.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm not too far. Yeah, no, that just sounds like they're sort of like, again, they're trying to like push it aside for now.
I think the message that I'm trying to sort of put across here is that you know, by the time you watch this, you'll probably know how much the new Radeon cards cost, and it's console money. It's likely to be console money just for that one product. I guess we should talk just a little bit about the comparisons between the two cards. Essentially, the 5700 is a salvage part. The XT is the fully enabled one. 36 compute units versus 40, and there's a slight clock reduction on the lower end part. But it seems they both have 8 gigabytes of G6 memory, which is great. And they both are running at 448 gigabytes per second of bandwidth. So they haven't nerfed the G6 in the 5700.
That's good.
Their own benchmarks versus 2060, they reckon the 5700 is about approximately 10% faster, whereas the...
but is that in Strange Brigade?
No, they did an average across a bunch of titles.
They do love Strange Brigade.
They love Strange Brigade. They actually omitted that from the slide, so maybe they think they'd overcooked it. But you know, there was like a 20% leap in Battlefield 5, which you know is pretty impressive. The 5700 XT, they're talking about a more modest 6% increase over 2070. Okay. So it's all going to come down to the pricing because. You know, NVIDIA have been sitting back thinking, we'll just roll out our super cards, and
they caught a lot of flack for pricing this time.
Yeah,
NVIDIA did.
It's so you know, prices have got to come down, and these super cards will basically probably inch them ahead again in most titles. So yes, the AMD side of things has got to be really value-rific.
Exactly. There was another feature, though, while I'm thinking about it, they showed was the sharpening.
It's called contrast adaptive sharpening.
And they were sort of pitting this against DLSS. And they were talking some trash talking.
A bit of trash talking.
But that's how it goes in this business.
Yeah. So to talk about the technology, it's a screen space sharpening filter that leaves high contrast material alone and does enhancements on lower contrast detail.
Lower contrast in-surface detail. Because, you know, sharpening on high contrast edges, that's where you get the ringing artifacts.
Yeah,
and so obviously, you know, a little bit of sharpening can add a bit to the image.
This is the thing that they're talking about, which is specifically that the kind of edge ringing on the sharpening that you do, you know, they did point it out in DLSS, and admittedly it's obviously there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's not great. That's not there with this. Oh yeah, and the other thing they're talking about is upscaling it. So you sharpen the image and upscaling it to 4K or whatever. They reckon it's awesome. And
so this is the big difference, though, is DLSS is designed to actually add additional information. So the pixel resolution is lower.
I was a bit disappointed with AMD when they started to do the DLSS comparisons. On the one hand, yes, there is edge ringing on DLSS, and it is occasionally quite ugly. On the other hand, CAS, their new technology, it's getting a pretty naive upscale to 4K, and it's not adding any extra detail.
But you know, at the same time, I'm curious to see it in action because, to be honest, DLSS has not impressed me that much in terms of real-world application. It's still obvious that it's a lower resolution.
Sure.
And there's plenty of visible artifacts to consider, so we'll see how this compares, but fundamentally it is just an upscale with a sharpening. And I'm curious to see how it compares to some of the adaptive sharpening features written for Reshade, for instance, which are actually pretty effective as is, and also screen space.
The way I kind of see it, though, is I think they might be selling it as something different to what the author devised it as. Yeah, because you know, there is a problem with detail being lost in temporal anti-aliasing, temporal super sampling, that kind of thing. And if there is a technique to bring back some of that lost detail without some of the horrific artifacts we've seen on others that have tried it, then this is actually a really useful technology, because a lot of PC users aren't happy about that loss in detail.
Oh, absolutely.
But temporal supersampling, temporal anti-aliasing is here to stay. It is not going away.
And it shouldn't. It's better in the end, despite some of the flaws. Sure. But it's important for eliminating overall scene aliasing and sparkling and
and if you can mitigate the
lack of detail,
exactly, then that's brilliant. So that's what I would have focused on. It's like, this is the way games are going, this is the down point, this is how we can mitigate it. Whereas, going on about how DLSS is not great is not really.
And also they were focusing on, well, it looks great when upscaling, but I actually would like to use it at native resolution.
Yeah,
native 4K plus this a bit of sharpening with a TAA.
Yeah, but let's give it a go. Let's see how it looks.
I'm curious to see how it
looks. One thing to stress is that there is no temporal component to this. So it's comparing it to DLSS, which for all its faults is temporally extremely stable.
It is.
That kind of rubbed me up the wrong way, I think. But it's an interesting technology, and the guy who's done it, Timothy Lotz, is a legend.
Indeed, yes.
So it's going to be good, and I want to test it and see what we're doing there. So yeah, a lot of interesting stuff over these 2 days. I guess we'll be detailing more of it in our reviews.
Exactly.
That's really the venue to be talking about deep dive stuff. Ryzen 3000, I think, Intel are kind of on the ropes at the moment because they just haven't been able to get to 10 nanometer on mass-produced consumer parts. And AMD are rolling up with more cores. They're more power efficient. Performance per watt is, significantly better. They've got this, I think it's the Ryzen 7 3700X, which is 8-core parts, 65 watts, $330. And it comes with a 125 watt cooler, so you can do awesome overclocking out of the box.
Wow, yeah.
With the supplied cooler.
Supplied coolers, I remember when Intel used to do that.
Yeah, exactly. So, that's ticking a lot of boxes for me with Ryzen 3000. The question is the game performance, whether it does actually stack up, because the leap from Intel with the 8700K, the 9900K versus second gen Ryzen, there are scenarios which are just frighteningly vast.
Exactly.
So yeah, a lot of work to do there. But that plus the PCI Express 4.0, which is going to be great for content creators, all of those cores, I really think they're in a great place with the CPU side of things. GPU, I think there's obviously big progress there. They've got wins in the cloud space. They've got wins with the consoles. I'm going to be interested to see how NVIDIA respond. Again, by the time we get this video out, maybe they would have unveiled the supercards and the pricing there, and the battle begins anew. But yeah, the next gen console side of things, I still think the teraflop number is not going to be indicative of the
somewhat
actual
meaningless
experience
this time.
Yeah.
So they'll have to find a new metric for a quick consumer measurement.
Yeah, from what I've heard from developers, they're quite happy with the PS5, but it's all about the experience, I think, this time around. And that's kind of where we are at the moment. So
some good information.
Some good information, and it was a really interesting trip. Yeah, hats off to AMD for really having lots of stuff to talk about.
That's great.
There hasn't really been that much in terms of hardware to talk about this year.
No, it's been relatively quiet.
Yeah, a few new Turing cards, but that's kind of about it. So to actually get, a new GPU architecture and to have this big stack of CPUs, I'm really happy about that. I'm glad I came out.
Should keep you busy once they start arriving.
Yes, all at the same time. Brilliant. Okay, so I think we might as well sign off there. So thanks for joining me on that.
Of course, thanks for sharing all that great information.
Okay, please do like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. As always, ring the bell for instant notifications whenever we produce a new Digital Foundry video. Share our content, why not?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, if you enjoyed it. And follow us on Twitter. And yes, if you want to see all of our stuff in pristine quality, support us via the DF Patreon. You'll be helping the team very directly, which is awesome. But that's all from us for now. Thanks for watching.
Featuring 2.4 GHz wireless, 50mm Pro G audio drivers, and DTS Headphone X 2.0 surround sound technology under the hood, the G935 headset delivers the ultimate wireless audio solution for gamers, whether you're playing on PC, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, or mobile. Order yours today from Logitech G.